Jeremy, in the spaces yesterday at Surgeons, you mentioned that you were a scaler. You love marketing, and this is actually a perfect way to transition into my next topic here, and that is the beginnings of Overworld. Real quick, I want to get your opinion on something, and this could be a little spicy take, is as the Web3 gaming sector continues to grow by the day, I think of many ZTX, Axie Infinity, all these titles. What strategy are you focusing on first to make sure Overworld does not lie in the same niche as others?
In terms of DAU, it's worse than it's been in years almost.
Right.
Maybe there's been a recent spike, but let's say Axie Infinity, right? What is their biggest initiative internally right now to grow Axie as a brand? It's their mobile phone, their mobile game. Oh, Axie Infinity Origins, I think is the name. The point still stands that where are they going to grow the game? They are going on mobile phone. So that's going to be true for every game that wants to succeed. You need to branch out of Web3, right? Web3 is a wonderful to build foundations, especially when it comes to community. And I call them like evangelists. It's people that are going to be a noisemaker or amplifier of your message. It's a fantastic way to change the business model and create kind of like mutually beneficial systems around transmission of information and transmission of value. But the fundamentals themselves, they do not change. So your question is like, how are we going to make sure that Overworld next year, in 5 years, is still like a game that is growing and played by hopefully millions of people? There's a couple like answer to that.
Right.
One is taking a very big, bold bet on design. That bold bet is just the concept of finite economy. Finite economy means that you're chaining yourself to the concept of digital ownership. Digital ownership in an infinite system is somewhat meaningless, right? The moment you say, no, the land, there's only 5,000. The gold, the iron, the wood, there's only X many, right? The moment you introduce those concepts, suddenly a lot of the game makes sense for guilds and scholars and people who are going to be participating in the economy, even beyond the fun aspect. That's something that is super risky. I mean, we can like really fuck it up if the economy is not like perfect, and we'll need to iterate a ton on it. But so that's kind of like the big thesis and the big bet of that game. Then the second piece is taking learnings from what has been successful recently in gaming. I'm a huge MiHoYo fan, and I think there's like a lot that can be done in the action RPG space in terms of like game mechanics, character collector, character upgrading. That is somewhat, I don't want to lie, right? It's like the fun aspect, you can find it in a lot of different places. How you integrate the fun aspect within like a cohesive core loop that retains you and makes you come back, that's where the magic happens. And then it's going to be like leveraging, what Michael and I have learned over decades of experience, right? It's like, how do you take a game and market it via performance marketing, via brand marketing in a way that is exciting, that brings people back, want to install the game, and then brings them back later. So it is both a combination of like starting in Web3 and then scaling in Web2. I admire Lucanet a ton from Pudgy Penguin. Incredible work in terms of building a brand, starting from Web3 and growing it into something where I imagine 80% of the general population who interacts with their Instagram or their TikTok has no clue that it has anything to do with NFTs. But managing those communities in parallel, like really masterclass of marketing, and we're thinking about it similarly when it comes to video games.
Jeremy, one question to you, because again, I keep coming back to your experience in Web 2. What are some key things you've learned from the Web 2 side of things that you're now trying to implement in Web 3? Or do you even see Web 2 strategies working in the Web 3 business model?
Yeah, the reality is like if you're smart about how you interpret data and how you collect data, you are able to be extremely efficient when it comes to your Web3 acquisition, right? The mechanics are dissimilar to Web2, but as long as they're quantifiable, that's where I'm really great at. And I mean, even today, right, I've got the dashboard of the application system in front of me, and it's fascinating. And it's fascinating in like so many different ways, right? Which means who are the users, right? How many are like bots? How many are real people? How many have like wallets with no history? How many have like an NFT of any kind in there? Once you like able to like look at all of that data, that's where the experience comes, where you're able to interpret the data in order to figure out how you're going to like target the right segment of that community. And in this situation, it's just like choosing the right holders. There is a balance that needs to happen, especially between Web3, between like providing, worthy status or whitelist status, people who are going to be great holder, but also you need to like bring people who necessarily are not the perfect holder, but will be a great contributor to the platform, meaning via social media, etc. So that's how I'm leveraging the experience. And then honestly, I look forward to, I keep on saying I want it to be April, but it's definitely going to be like most likely May when our alpha is fully playable by our players after our Manasite launch the token and after the first marketplace opens. And then that's going to be a lot of data analysis, right, around how many people start the game, what trips them, when do they leave, when do they come back. And what I've learned is there is a big difference between the reality of stats, of game stats, and what people tell you about your game. Those two things at times are both true, but at times they're conflictual. And you have to be able to like balance that.
For me, when I think of OverWorld, first of all, I love the design. From a visual aesthetic perspective, I love the design. But out of all the many designs that we see in the Web3 space, you have pixel art, anime kind of art, right? You have so many different variations. What made you want to go with this space-like brand of OverWorld? And did you have a personal preference when it came to building that?
It comes back to kind of like market analysis, right? There's two big markets in the world when it comes to gaming, Asia and the West. And when you look at the games that succeed in both markets, they tend to be very different. Look at the Japanese or Chinese market, very anime, gacha games, but those games don't succeed in the West. In the West, you're going to have military, macho, Call of Duty games, hyper casual, but the whole anime segment doesn't seem to work in the West. I don't think you can name one top 100 grossing anime game in the West. Maybe there's like one, but there's almost none, right? It's Marvel Strike Force, it's big Western brands. But oddly enough, when you look at the PC market, League of Legends in between those two worlds, and League of Legends, the brand is around like K-pop. Yeah, I suck at it. But the one, they're like CMO is a French guy as well, and I talked to him. Now he's the CEO, but started at the CMO, and I talked about it with them. And we believe, both of us, that there's magical space in between those two cultures. And it's very hard to navigate that line, right? So I don't know if it's like a plus on my side, but I've lived in Japan. I've been to Japan numerous amount of times. I was born in France, where France is the second biggest buyer per capita of anime and manga, and so I was like nursed via that culture as well, right? And France is like a very graphic and visual aesthetic country, where probably one of the best countries when it comes to animation, right? The Minions was done in France. Like all of the Mario movie was done in France as well, which is very good at animation. That's like kind of like a cultural trait. And so I wanted to build a brand that I could market in both geos, which is very, very difficult, right? It's possible, but almost never happens. And that's why we went with this like Western proportions with anime texturing on the characters, right? And we're trying to like balance those two factors in order to have something coherent. The game is, cell shaded. If you've played, the reference internally we always have is Honkai Star Rail and Zenless Zone Zero, so two MiHoYo game. Those are kind of like the aesthetic we're going for when it comes to line work, texturing, but culturally, we're trying to bring more of like Western influence, meaning we don't have like girls that suspiciously look very young or girls that are like, not wearing a ton of clothes. We're trying to have something that is going to appeal to Western audience, because that type of like waifu
The
trend,
waifus.
it doesn't work in the West. Americans prefer Wonder Woman. It's like she's buff, she's strong, she's beautiful, of course, but she's not a teen, right? She's a real woman. And we're trying to navigate that, where heroes are heroic regardless of gender, put in situations that like emphasizes their strength.